Suddenly they heard the house door open. They rose carefully and entered the hallway. Everything seemed to be in order. The door was closed. The same silence in the house. Only the bathroom door was slightly open, with the light off. And inside, someone was crying. Macabre visits from witches and spirits, from mysterious angels or alleged angels, visits from creatures, impossible entities. In this episode of Night Tales, my dear community, we'll hear stories of sudden, unexpected manifestations in places that had never experienced paranormal events before. Tonight's stories are evidence that at any moment, maybe sooner than you think, you could be the protagonist of stories of the night. On August 1st, another year passed since the most terrifying event of my life. That's why I need to share this with you. I think it's time. It happened at home with my parents in 2007. It was a simple house with large windows facing the street. At night, I liked to stay up reading because everything outside would go quiet. At the time, I was reading the Game of Thrones books my uncle gave me, long before I imagined they'd become a television series. One of those nights, already past midnight, I was really into my reading when I heard a strange noise at the window, like someone had scraped the glass with something. I turned off the lamp I was reading with so I could see outside. As soon as it went out, I saw a figure peeking in the window. It looked like a man, but it wasn't. It had a thick, unusual beard on its horned neck, not its face, as if it had hair all around its head, ape-like, but with a human face. And there was an even worse detail. He had small, twisted horns that shone in the dim streetlight. I felt like I almost peed myself from fear. The most disturbing part was his face. She wasn't pressed up against the glass like someone curious. No, it was tilted, as if she had to crane her neck to see me from an odd angle. Her skin was rough like an animal's, but the eyes were definitely human. Very human. I didn't move. I could barely breathe. The creature didn't smile, but I swear it bared its teeth in a threatening way, and they weren't human. They resembled flat, worn fangs, yellowish. I called my parents, and the creature lowered its head and vanished into the dark. When they arrived, no one was outside, even though they checked outside. I know it wasn't a childish fantasy. I was already 15, never before or after. I've never had another vision like that. Hello, community. My name is Isaac, and I want to tell you something that happened to me a few years ago in a town in Guasave, Sinaloa called Las Culebras. My grandparents' house was there. We still called it the grandparents' house, even though they had been dead for years. It was a small house with walls worn out and neglected because it was no longer used every day, but it became a symbol of family unity. Every year on their anniversary, all the children and grandchildren would gather there. It helped us remember them, of still having a place to belong. Although we were already spread across Sinaloa and Sonora, that house was special. My uncles grew up there. We spent many summers there as kids. And even though over time it became empty, we all felt it was a place we couldn't let die. It's funny that after my grandparents died, the house was left empty, but there was still someone who seemed to take care of it. El Negro. El Negro was a large, strong dog with dark, coarse fur. He belonged to my grandparents, and after they died, neighbors a few streets away adopted him. They cared for and fed him there. But whenever we got to the house, he'd show up too. As if he could smell it, as if he knew. He would stay with us to sleep and watch over the house just as he always had. He was old, but still imposing. Tall, his face marked by the scars from fights he had with other dogs, with that deep, powerful bark that made the ground shake. To everyone, he was like a guardian. When a family gathering was coming up, we arrived a bit early, but only cousins our age did, to spend time together a couple of days before everyone else arrived. 4 of us planned to go, but only 2 made it in the end. Neither my cousin Adrian nor I. The others had a road accident and had to return to Culiacan. So we stayed there, alone at our grandparents' house. Honestly, we had never felt fear there, neither as kids nor adults. At night, everything was very dark since the house was far from town. At night, it felt like only emptiness existed outside, but we'd never heard anything unusual. That night, we talked. There were beers ready for the gathering, but we didn't even touch them. We talked for hours until we fell asleep in the living room, on the chairs and armchairs. I suddenly woke up at 3 a.m. when I heard Adrian was getting up. He walked quickly to the window and then went to lock the door. I instinctively asked him what was happening, and he replied seriously. I felt like someone was approaching. His words sent chills through me. What do you mean you felt it? Did you dream something or what? He replied quietly but firmly. No. Someone's coming. I went to the window and saw it too. A woman was approaching, coming out of the darkness. She stood just outside, right before the fence, watching us from inside the house. My first thought was that she was a neighbor. Someone saw us arrive and wanted to confirm our identity. But it was 3 a.m. No one looks out at that hour, especially in a town where everyone knows each other. The woman waved and greeted us. Adrian shouted at her to get away from there. But right after he said that, the woman opened the fence and started walking toward the door. We left the window and heard her voice. Let me in. I'm just here to pick something up. Let me in. I'm just here to pick something up. I swallowed hard. I told her there was nothing for her there, but the woman insisted.
Your grandparents owe me this.
I'm going to go in.
Adrian and I looked at each other. We shook our heads again. At that moment, we heard her running toward the back of the house. We also ran to secure the back door, and that's when Adrian had an idea. He looked out the front window and started to whistle. Loudly, insistently. I didn't get what he was doing until I heard it. A distant, deep bark. A bark I knew. It was Negro. Because we hadn't played music, he didn't know people were in the house. Negro ran up, growling and barking fiercely. Outside, it sounded like he was fighting with something, but that something he was fighting with didn't sound like a woman. It didn't match what we just saw. I don't know how to describe it. It was a strange, dry noise, like something big resisting that then moved away, slipping into the darkness. Soon everything calmed down. The black man stood before the door, staring intently, his hair slicked back into the night, toward where we had seen her for the first time. We figured we'd better let him in. And even though he had never been the kind of dog to come into the house, that time we let him in. Only then were we able to breathe again, to sit down. Negro stayed in front of the door all night without moving, with his gaze fixed outside. It was almost dawn when Negro barked again. We carefully approached the window and saw her again. The woman was there again behind the fence, remaining in place. And then it happened. The most horrifying thing happened. The woman slowly lifted her dress and revealed her legs. I swear to you, on my parents, those were not human legs. They resembled dark goat legs, and that's how they were knee-deep. I was left breathless. Adrian saw it too because he squeezed my arm so hard it hurt. She pulled her dress down again. Without breaking eye contact, she pulled out large, rusty scissors from behind her back. With them, she made a gesture, a strong movement, as if she were cutting something in the air. She stayed there motionless, with the scissors in her hands, until the sun began to rise. Only then did she turn and slowly walk away, vanishing into the remaining darkness. When the other cousins arrived the next day, we told them what had happened, but they didn't know anything, and neither did our parents. No one had ever had an encounter like that in that house, not even when they were kids. 8 years have passed since that night, and it has not appeared again until today. But when my family discusses that house, when the topic returns, no one dares to stay there alone anymore. We all know who we're talking about when we mention that thing that came at 3 a.m. And Negro isn't here to protect us anymore. Thanks for staying with us, comunidad. Stories like the one we just heard show that some tales aren't from far-off legends or local rumors, but from the most intimate places, from the family, from the houses we live in. Memories experienced firsthand and passed from parents to children. Over time, they become unforgettable stories. If you also keep a story like that in your family's or your home's memory, you can email it to us at miraletodelanoche@gmail.com. Maybe we'll hear it here soon, all together. But for now, let's continue. There are still many more stories tonight. Hi everyone, hope you're well. My name is Karen, and I want to share something that happened a few years ago before I had my baby. And I worked as a clerk at a convenience store inside a gas station on the highway. Despite what you may think, it was a quiet job. Most nights, few people came in, except for the occasional tired traveler stopping to buy coffee, water, or chocolate for the road. I was never afraid in that place. Even though I was alone at the register, at least 2 attendants were always outside watching the gas pumps. Sometimes a strange character would show up, people who talked to themselves or who seemed way too nervous to be in the middle of nowhere. But nothing serious ever happened. Until that night I'll tell you about. I was behind the counter looking out at the road through the big window in front. That stretch of asphalt felt endless, with distant trailer lights now and then. Then I saw a figure running toward me. Yes, down the road, but running. At first I assumed it was a traveler who'd had an accident, but as he got closer, I realized something was wrong. He ran oddly as if unsure how. He moved both hands to the same side, to the right and then to the left. Stiff, clumsy like a puppet. He ran across the gas station and went straight to the store's door. Right there he stopped, and then he walked in slowly, like he just remembered how to do it. The white light in the place allowed me to see her clearly. Her skin looked unusual. It wasn't wrinkled or aged. It was loose, as if his face didn't fit him, as if the skin were a poorly placed mask over something else. It was even more obvious in his eyes. Around the sockets you could see the redness, raw flesh, as if what was underneath was trying to come out. He walked up and slowly put both hands on the counter. They also looked like loose gloves, skin that hung without fitting the real shape of what was underneath. He looked at me and smiled. He had black teeth and then tilted his head to one side, almost tenderly, as if he were taking care of me. I swallowed hard, and with a trembling voice I asked him, "Can I help you? Are you okay?" She smiled and replied,
You don't know who I am. I'm an angel.
I found it ridiculous, but the voice sounded like several quiet voices layered together, as if inside that skin many different mouths were speaking. I instinctively looked for attendants outside, but saw no one. None of them were at their post. The woman didn't move. She was still there so close that I couldn't leave without passing by her. I asked her if she needed anything. "Do you want water? Food?"
No!
She replied dryly without blinking. "So can I give you something?" I asked her. She touched her chest with her black nails, almost as if she wanted to show me that what I could give her was right there, inside. At that moment, I saw something that made me even more nervous. Outside at the gas station, an old truck came from the opposite side of where the woman arrived and stopped very slowly with its lights off. It remained there silently for a few seconds, facing us. I wasn't sure if I should ask for help. For some reason, the truck scared me just as much as the woman in front of me. She didn't turn even an inch. She didn't seem to notice that truck, or she didn't care. The truck started up again without getting gas, without waiting for the attendant, and disappeared down the road. I stayed in front of the woman, in front of the angel, more and more trapped by her details that I couldn't stop seeing. I couldn't look away. The more I looked at her, the more I realized nothing in her appearance was human. The skin hung, the way his smile never moved, his dry eyes. Not sure how long it was before a dispatcher finally noticed and came to the store, opened the door and checked if all was well. The woman, without changing her smile, turned to him and replied with that same voice of many voices,
All right, I was just stopping by to see the girl.
Then he turned and left the shop. As soon as he stepped outside, he started running strangely again. He moved both hands to one side, then continued and vanished down the dark road. The dispatcher was left confused and thoughtful before I spoke to him. He told me he saw his face and noticed something profoundly inhuman in his expression. Strangely, there are no houses, businesses, or factories for miles around. There's nothing. Where did that woman come from? Where was she going? What did she mean by calling herself an angel? Someone here in the community has some theory or any similar experience? Please, I would love to know that I'm not the only one out there. I still wonder what I saw. I want to think it was a strange person, a very strange one, but I can't quite convince myself. Remember to pray to your guardian angel today. Before I share the last story tonight, I want to thank you all for sending in your stories. Remember, there are a lot of them. We receive a lot every week, so we always make a mix between old stories and stories that have just arrived. And, I also want to take this break to remind you that if you want to keep supporting us beyond these stories, beyond this space, and now turn off the light and get ready, because there's still the last story of the night left. Good night. I'm going to share a story my mom told me years ago. Please keep it anonymous. She experienced it as a child with her older sister. You see, to get to this story, I have to explain what they were going through. At that time, my grandmother had just separated. The situation was tough. She chose to leave the city to escape my terrible grandfather and start over with her 2 daughters. She supported them alone. So she took 2 different jobs and she was almost never at home, many times not even at night. My mom was 8 and my aunt 10. They were young but knew how to care for themselves. A family acquaintance to help them lent them a house. An old, simple house with only a few beds and a couch in the living room. It wasn't much, but it was enough. Uninhabited for years, they saw and recognized more than just a home there. They recognized a refuge, something they desperately needed. My mom always says they felt a strange sadness in the house as soon as they walked in. Initially, they blamed their situation to leaving their city, Buenos Aires, their friends, and even my grandfather. Even though he had been bad, he was still their father, and the change hurt them. They tried to adapt to it. They did their homework and waited for my grandmother when they could, and they kept each other company. The family became very close. It was the 3 of them against the world. But one night, something happened that my mom never forgot. It was the night before her first day at the new school. She and my aunt were in their bed, excited and nervous, getting their things ready for the next day. They'd be starting at a new school with unfamiliar people. It was the kind of nerves you enjoy because at some point we all like that chance to start over. All was silent outside. Suddenly, they heard the door of the house opening. They didn't get scared or anything because they assumed it was my grandmother, who might have left work earlier. They heard footsteps quickly cross the living room and head to the bathroom. Strangely, they didn't hear her usual greeting or see her checking on them, and sensed something was off. The 2 of them looked at each other, got up carefully, and went out into the hallway. Everything seemed in order. The door was closed, and the silence in the house was just like before. Only the bathroom was slightly ajar, with the light off, and inside, someone was crying. It was an ugly cry, very loud, full of sadness. My mom remembers that they stood in front of the door, hesitating whether to go in or not. They wanted to believe it was their mother, but knew that cry didn't sound like hers. It was deeper, more solid, as if the person was being torn apart inside. Very scared, they slowly pushed the door open. The sound cleared up. It was a desperate cry, so loud it hurt their ears. They shakily searched for the light switch. They searched for the switch, and once they turned on the light, the crying continued for 2 more seconds and suddenly stopped. Total silence. There was no one, absolutely no one in the bathroom. My mom says they even checked behind the curtain, inside the shower, behind the door, and nothing. All that was left was that echo in their heads, as if they were still hearing it. And the thing is, they had clearly heard that crying right in front of them, as if someone invisible were crying. They looked at each other, realizing they couldn't tell their mom. They didn't want her to worry, stop leaving them alone, or have more on her mind. Nor did they want her to feel she had to move out, especially after finally finding someone to lend them this place. They couldn't afford to pay rent at that moment. So they promised to keep the secret and never told her. But from that night on, the house was never the same again. They heard whispers in the walls, like soft voices mixing with the wind. Sometimes they felt like someone walked down the halls when they were alone. They never heard the crying that clearly again, but they felt they knew that the presence was there. One day it arrived and decided to stay, perhaps drawn by so much sadness. My mom says she can still clearly remember how it sounded. That heartbreaking, sad cry that seemed to come from the heart of someone who was no longer alive. She and my aunt decided to silence him then. And it wasn't until years later when she told me she broke that promise, but her voice was still trembling. And I can't help but imagine her, because her eyes water when she remembers. Imagine her in that moment. My mom is a scared, vulnerable little girl. What entered that house? What was crying in that dark bathroom? We will never know.